You are listening to Faithless Brewing, a Magic the Gathering podcast for the Spike Road. Each week we design new decks for tournament play. We put our creations to the test and share our findings on the air. Coming up on the Brew session, David Robertson returns with 6 fresh deck lists for March of the Machine, The Aftermath. We look at Sarkhan, Soul Aflame, Nixilis, Kingpin, 4-mana Narset, Urborg Scavengers, and more. That's all coming up on Faithless Brewing. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Faithless Brewing podcast. I am David Robertson, and I am joined, as always, by the host, the CEO of the Faithless Brewing podcast. He is Cave Dan online. He is Dan Shriver, looking a little jet lagged. What is going on, my friend?
I'm a little worse for wear, David, but I'm alive. I'm still kicking.
Back from Taiwan?
Still here.
Yes.
How you doing?
I'm well. I am well. I took a few trips myself, back from Memphis, back from Boston for the marathon, so...
Yeah, you've been all over the place. Now, were you in Minneapolis for the Pro Tour? Magic Con Minneapolis.
I was in Minneapolis while the Pro Tour was happening, but I instead went on a 100-mile bike ride and attended a 2-year-old's birthday party, which I'm sure they'll remember forever. Mm-hmm. And I took my missus to a very lovely dinner, and so I did not even watch a single second of the coverage, actually. Not particularly interested in Standard in general, and not particularly interested in Fable and what's the 3/2 vampire?
Oh, Blood Tithe Harvester.
Harvester, yeah. The mirrors over and over again. Like, the gameplay just wasn't interesting to me. Even like Frank Carson's like spicy list, it was just like, oh man, that's tough. Tough time to announce that Standard is not rotating for another year.
What was Frank Carson's spicy list? I also did not check the coverage.
He compiles like a list of the spiciest tech or whatever.
I see.
At the end, people should go on Frank Carson's Twitter feed. Obviously, he's just a very pleasant Magic personality in a sea of unpleasant personalities. I highly recommend just interacting with Frank Carson's way of enjoying the game. But he compiles a bunch of decks he thinks are cool or technology that people might not be aware of. So.
Gotta expect we're going to see a ban announcement soon. Aaron Forsythe basically said as much without saying it. They just haven't drafted the copy yet. So,
are we still on the like Monday morning is when the ban announcements happen thing, or
nope.
We're just it could happen at any time?
Could happen at literally any time. They don't even know when it's going to happen.
He's more of like I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. Like, he's just ready for the Oppenheimer movie this summer.
Yeah. All right. So you survived Minneapolis. You felt the electricity, the excitement crackling in the air, but you did not participate yourself.
I saw some Magic cosplayers, provocatively dressed, wandering through the sculpture garden and stuff. So that was cool.
Lovely city. Lovely time of year.
Yeah, I mean, people were like, oh man, Minneapolis is sick. Like, why is the city not more crowded? It's like, well, it's not the first week of May most of the year. May in Minneapolis and September in Minneapolis is literally the best place on planet Earth. Honestly. The weather's spectacular. The bugs are not bad in either of those months. It's still dry.
Northeast Minneapolis art crawl?
Yeah, that's the week before Memorial Day, so that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, I'm jealous.
Art a Whirl is what it's called. And then they have these art things all through the night, and they shut down the bridge, and all these people are like biking through these weird like psychedelic colored whatever.
All right, I'm gonna come visit you soon.
There it is, Minneapolis.
I'll be there soon. We'll do our first live show in person.
Well, that'd be pretty sweet.
All right, David. So we miss you on our set review, our very compressed set review episode for March of the Machine, The Aftermath. But you have not been idle. You've been traveling all over the world and you've been brewing up a storm, right? You already sent me like a dozen lists for cards from March of the Machine Aftermath, which we're going to dive into today. Just got a whole bunch of deck lists, first drafts, first crack, when the inspiration is fresh. But I do want to ask you just at the top about your overall impressions of the set and, if there's anything you want to add to what Morgan and I talked about.
So I'm famously, let's use the politically correct term, I'm famously skeptical of the Magic the Gathering like narrative. Like, oh, what big bad are they going to face? And then what planeswalker is going to be, defeated or turn to the dark side or be killed or marry another planeswalker? Like, none of that stuff matters to me. This is just a game of resources. I spend some resources, my opponent spends some resources, and eventually I end up at 0 life. or they do. So, having said all that, though, I do miss the block format, not because I felt immersed in a world or I needed more time for these, knockoff, all the heroes come together, all the heroes don't come together, which has been happening in the comic book since like 1982, right? So it's like a 40-year-old sort of narrative trick at this point. It's more just that I miss the synergy-focused decks. And you had a lot more cards, right, when you had 2 sets that could have a certain mechanic or whatever. Now, if they don't, like, for instance, backup. If you like backup a lot, or if you hate it, you're just not going to see it again, right? It's just like we had our one shot at it. If they, got the power level a little weaker than they wanted or a little higher than they wanted, we're just stuck with it. The only thing that isn't true for us sagas, because I think they realize that planeswalkers are really a design problem and sagas are awesome. And so they can print sagas all the time. But, it's like mutate. Well, it seems like maybe they didn't get that quite where they wanted. But we don't see mutate again. And so that's the thing that I miss is the coherence of the mechanics. So if, and it's a big if, these smaller sets allow them to continue to explore mechanics or to flesh out some mechanics. Now, my understanding is that these sets are designed like a year and a half ahead of time. And when Mom comes out, they don't have time to alter, these aftermath cards if they missed low or high on some mechanic. But in theory, they provide an outlet to flesh out, X amount of cards more with kicker or something for your Roost of Drakes deck.
So just to clarify, when you say these sets, are you referring just to March of the Machine Aftermath or to a hypothetical future in which we have small supplemental sets after the main ones?
Yeah, I'm predicting we have a lot of small... There's a lot of other things that are, as we would say, like in the experimental world like commingling with this variable. So it might be that Aftermath is very unpopular, and it could be because that they are selling 5-set packs or 5-card packs at the price of 15-card packs, and people can't play limited with it, right? So then they'd say like, oh, the set is a failure. That doesn't mean it's a design failure. It might be a failure because of those other things. So it's tough to pull apart like whether it's a success or failure. But if they were to continue, and I hope they do, I like the idea of it just like fleshing out the mechanical world as opposed to the narrative world. I don't care about what's happening on Goblikon after whatever alleged battle took place. But it's like, oh, more cards that have like landfall. That's kind of interesting. Or more things that interact with battles, although none of these cards really seem to.
In that respect, Aftermath is like the worst example of a small set because it's completely scattered. Like March of the Machine itself was set on 35 different planes because there's 35 battles, one for each plane. Grabbing cards from every single set, like little callbacks to literally every plane Magic has visited. And then Aftermath was more of the same, just like 50 random cards, one from each world. Some worlds got 2 or 3, but there was no mechanical coherence to it.
Yeah, so this specific set I don't like because, again, Mom didn't really have a a mechanical coherence to it either, other than, I guess, the battles. Whether people think those are wins or not is... I'm surprised people haven't just been calling them out as a miss, since they barely showed up at all in any Pro Tour deck in Standard, and they aren't a big part of Pioneer or Modern. I mean, this is just like, we created a whole new... It's like if they printed Planeswalkers and then nobody played with them. Like, at least, Jace saw some play or something. I mean, it's crazy how little this whole new card type, when's the last time we had a card type was like 7 years ago. How old are Planeswalkers? It's just like, yeah, we just barely play them. Like, people have just started cutting them. Every time you see a list now, it's like, oh, I'm only playing 2 of such and such. Anyway, I guess the point I'm making is I like the idea of a small set. I like the idea of this being their outlet for commander cards as opposed to printing commander-specific sets, although that's not what they've declared that they're going to do, but they have so many legends in this set that it's like a bunch of de facto commanders, and I wish they would do that and just abandon printing commander-specific sets and focus all their time on designing cards that can be played in all the formats, because any card printed to Standard or Modern or Pioneer can be played in Commander. Cards that are printed directly to Commander can only be played there or Legacy. So it's just strange that they've got all this energy focused. Like, you can print a card for Commander, even with weird Commander text, X amount of opponents or whatever, which some of these cards have, and still make it Standard legal.
Yeah, I mean, my conspiracy theory is that the only reason they did this set at all, or the only reason that they did the D-Spark plotline, was so that they could take our beloved Planeswalker characters and make more that you could use as commanders. They could have just changed it to say that you can use any Planeswalker as a commander. They decided not to do that, so what we need instead is more Nissa creatures, so that the Nissa fans can have more Nissa commanders to choose from.
Yeah, I guess I am not a commander player, but is that like giving people a lot of thrills, like changing 10 cards and then building a slightly different Nissa deck with the exact same colors? Like, is that something people do? So it's like, oh, I need 2 Lotus Cobras and 2 Gaia's Cradles because I've got these basically functionally identical decks with slightly different Nissas as my commander.
Well, if you follow enough Commander chatter, you find people getting super excited for duplicative versions of effects. Like, they can now get 2 Lotus Cobras, 1 in for your 99, because people crave synergy. Like, this is something that's been completely lost with Commander. Like, they cannot actually build around card interactions because you have to like fill your deck with tutors to do that. So they're missing like a huge chunk of the Magic play experience that I think we would not even consider playing Magic without that. Like, we don't play good stuff piles. We only play decks where we're interested in specific interactions of cards, and you know, whatever it takes to like bring the Commander players back into the fold. Like, yes, you can actually pick cards that do a similar thing, get multiple copies of them, and like have them interact in a regular way. Like, that is a fun way to enjoy the game of Magic and the rules system. Different strokes for different folks. I don't begrudge giving them an extra Lotus Cobra, if that's what it takes.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess to me, I like the idea of Aftermath. I like it as a replacement for Commander. I like it, the future creation of Aftermath-like sets as a way to expand on mechanics. So I guess for me, it's a win. I don't play Limited, though, and I think a lot of people do play Limited. So in that sense, like, just buying packs as ways to find singles is sort of famously a mugs game. So I don't know how that process works. You know, for us who just, cards are now available to rent, we rent them, we try them out. And we're enjoying Magic in a very narrow band. For that specific thing, the small set is really cool, I think. For how most people enjoy Magic, which is either through Commander, they might get something out of this. For people who play Limited, and that's kind of how they build their collection, then this set seems terrible, right? Because it's literally cards you cannot open in Limited. Or can you just like spend a shit ton of money and get like whatever 45 packs and like 3 at a time open them and simulate a limited game? I mean, because there's no common effects, right? So
there's no commons, yeah.
Yeah.
There's only one drop in the entire sets and no commons.
Yeah.
And now that you're mentioning this, I'm like, are these cards going to be on Magic Online? Like, a lot of cards enter Magic Online through drafting. So what if it turns out we just can't rent these because nobody's opening them? Nobody's buying the 5 card packs on Magic Online? I don't know. Anyway, so that's the set as a whole. Mord and I did our best to like rank the good ones for Modern and Pioneer, but we didn't get all of them. And I know, David, from talking to you, that there are some cards on your radar that you think have some interesting potential for Pioneer specifically. And actually, a few of them are showing up right here in some of these deck lists that you've got drawn up. So I would love to hear more about the cards you're excited about.
Yeah, I think before we get into that, though, we need to take care of a little bit of housekeeping at the top here. We want to give a big shout out to our newest patron. They are Jordan E. Welcome to Jordan. Welcome aboard. Right now, since it is kind of spoiler season 1.1 or whatever of Mom, there are tons of ideas floating around about these new cards. And one of the cool places to check them out is our Discord. So if you're interested in checking that Discord out, supporting the podcast, the best way to do that is to go to patreon.com/Faithless Brewing and join at whatever level is comfortable for you. And one of the cool things you do is you get to hear about people trying decks so you don't have to. Sometimes they're very successful. There's stuff to build on. Sometimes they just say, all right, this is actually kind of a dead idea. And you've saved yourself the ticks. Which we do a lot, right? We say, all right, we tried this. It didn't work. Hopefully we're saving our fans, our supporters from having to make the same mistakes.
We're trying to like talk each other out of it, but also at the same time talk someone in our Discord into trying it so that they can take the L's and share their findings with us. Yeah, big thanks to all of our listeners, all of our patrons. Your support really helps us a lot. So it helps us keep putting out this show. And yeah, we'd love to have you join us in the Faithless family.
All right, so yeah, welcome aboard, Jordan E. So the first deck I want to talk about, you guys did not mention this card, but Sarkhan Soulflayers. So this is a Izzet legend that is not spell-based, so in theory Dan should like it. 1, a blue and a red for a 2/4. I gotta get up here. Human Shaman? I don't know the type.
Legendary Planeswalker Sarkhan, right? Oh no, it's a creature.
No, it's a creature.
It's my commander. So, I can finally build my Sarkhan commander deck. Yes. Yeah, Human Shaman sounds right.
It is a Human Shaman. 2/4. Dragon spells you cast cost 1 colorless less to cast. Whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, you may have Sarkhan Soulflame become a copy of it until end of turn, except its name is Sarkhan Soulflame and it's legendary in addition to its other types. So what this means is that if you have a legendary dragon enter play, Sarkhan can copy that legendary dragon. It keeps its own name though, so you don't legend rule. But it loses its text, so you can't cast a second dragon once it copies. With the reduction, you can obviously still cast a second dragon, but it no longer has its own text. It becomes a copy of the dragon. So the natural curve, right, if we want to imagine it, is Sarkhan on 3, and we actually have 2 amazing options for dragons on 5 mana, right, which you could naturally cast on turn 4. Those are Glorybringer and Goldspan Dragon. Now, we had played a bunch with both of these cards, and I'd played a bunch with a blue-red, like, Counterspell Shell with main deck 4 Goldspan, like 2 Glorybringer. Because we have this as, like, a sort of pseudo-ramp card, and then it turns into sort of like a finisher at the same time, I think we just go up to the full 8. So I've got 4 Goldspan, 4 Glorybringer, 3 Sarkhan. I think the first Kiora is probably better than the 4 Sarkhan. 2 Galazeth Prismari. I wanted another dragon. I wanted a 4-mana dragon. Typically, I want 10 dragons in my Silumgar Scorn list. Still 4 Silumgar Scorn. If you are playing dragons and you are playing blue, it's still the best counterspell in the format by a lot. Fiery Impulse, Consider. These are all excellent 1-mana cards, especially with Galazeth, because it lets you play them the turn it comes into play. Same with Kiora. And then 1 Negate, 1 Censor, 3 Bone Crusher Giant, and a Draconic Roar.
So the draw of Sarkhan here is that it's one of the cards, one of several options that takes you from 3 into 5, which is a shell that you don't really see that often, but David, you've explored many iterations of this in Izzet colors with cards like Kiora, with cards like, I don't know, did you ever try Dragon's Horde or Urborg Scavengers and things like that?
I have played Dragon's Horde. I played the 2-mana artifact that taps to make it dragon mana.
Right. So you can definitely do it in Izzet colors. You can ramp 3 into 5. Sarkhan does that as well, while also becoming this like bonus dragon. So you get this really explosive attack on turn 4 with this haste dragon. Is that what we're seeing here? It's like the most powerful of the mana rocks.
Yeah. So if you think of like Kiora, we liked it sometimes because it would its untap interaction with Glorybringer is powerful. And then B, it actually drew cards, right? So it was like this value engine / mana rock. Sarkhan doesn't draw cards, but it actually like leads to ending the game quickly and gives you, now you won't always get to pick, but copying a Goldspan Dragon and getting 2 treasures and they each tap for 2 mana is just an amazing thing to do. And then copying Glorybringer, maybe you only need to exert 1, so you exert the Sarkhan if you don't have another dragon. That leaves your Glorybringer free to exert the following turn. Or you can just it's literally almost like a board wipe, right? You just double exert. So yeah, I think this is like, you fire Impulse on 1, you counterspell on 2, you play Sarkhan, they play whatever, their 3-drop, and then you play a 5 and sweep their board. You do 8 to them in the air and make a bunch of extra mana that allows you to leave up counterspell or whatever. I just think that the explosive turn on 4 is actually so much better than Cura plus draw, which is good against a black-red kind of shell. But there's so few mid-range matchups left in Pioneer. You actually want the ability to close the game quite quickly.
All right. So my question for you, David. The shell you just described for us, I would say, is the conservative approach using the good proven dragons, right? Goldspan Dragon, Glorybringer, and to some extent Galazeth. These are proven in different ways. But these are not the dragons that really double up with Sarkhan. There are other dragons that actually trigger on each dragon that attacks. And if you were to use Sarkhan to copy those, you would get exponential bonuses, So I'm curious if you would entertain those, even if it requires making the deck a little bit worse. The cards I'm thinking of specifically are Invasion of Tarkir, which could just replace the Bonecrusher Giants. That flips into a dragon that triggers on every dragon that attacks. And then the new one from the last set, the new Ojutai. I'm struggling to think of the name here.
It's Ojutai and something, Zergo, yeah.
Yeah, Zergo and Ojutai, which costs 5, requires a white pip, but it says, whenever 1 or more dragons you control deal combat damage to a player or battle, you get to look at your top 3 cards. 1 goes into your hand, the rest on the bottom. So with 2 of those...
No, is that true? So whenever 1 or more? Oh, because it copies the text?
Oh, it is 1 or more. Gosh.
So they'd each trigger once, though, is what you're saying. All
right, so it's not exponential. That's disappointing. All right, well, forget what I said about that, but nevertheless, Invasion of Tarkir does still work in this respect. And, other dragons, what's the one that creates a dragon whenever you attack? You know what I'm talking about, right? The ability to actually, double up a specific effect.
Yeah, okay, so the main attraction of dragons, in my opinion, is you to play Silumgar Scorn. So just dragons by themselves are not good enough creatures, right? I don't think you can pick whichever dragon you like there. None of them is better than just a normal the better 4 mana plays, right? They're not better than Chariot. They're not better than Sheoldred. So that's 1 mana less. We're paying 5 mana for a dragon. So the appeal is we are getting to play Silumgar Scorn, in my opinion. And so adding the 3rd color is way more painful when you understand that you want blue on your 2nd turn. And I think this is, by the way, when people complain about Pioneer, they are often complaining about this. They want to make their deck locked into all these synergies, and then they refuse to kind of pay the price that the format asks of them. So the Tarkir one, they imagine the time when they get to spend 2 mana and they get to do 3 or 4 damage at sorcery speed. But that just doesn't interact with any card in the format except for Mana Elf exactly when you're on the play. It doesn't interact with Greasefang. It doesn't interact with somebody getting Jace back and activating at an instant speed with the 3 mana Planeswalker, in the Rona shells. Just sorcery speed 2 damage or 3 damage is just not playable, especially in a deck that doesn't have that many damage sources. So, and you never get to copy that 4/4 dragon, right? You hit it or kill it somehow. It never flips typically when you have a Sarkhan in play. Sarkhan's copying the dragon that you played after you played the Tarkir, and then you're having to have one of those attack the Tarkir to get the 4/4 dragon. And then if you don't have a dragon the next turn, you aren't even turning Tarkir into a dragon to attack with your flipped Tarkir thing.
All right, so we have to go to Modern so we can Tribal Flames the Invasion of Tarkir.
Yeah, there you go.
The Invasion actually is better in Modern. This is something that Balson and Dakfade and 07 have been actually putting up some results with.
Yeah, exactly. Because you have these cards that are already playable, right? 2 mana do 5 damage is very good. We've experimented with that card. Flipping the dragon and getting a trigger out of it right away is at least worth something thinking about. Or like Tarmogoyf is again, like there's just no giant 2-drop that just flips these cards effortlessly.
Mm-hmm.
The only one I can think of, which I've thought a little bit about, is the 4/3 Minotaur that discards a card when it comes into play.
Oh, Blood Rage Brawler?
Yeah.
Okay, not that. All right, let's not play that. Thunderbreak Regent, that was the other card I was thinking of. So that was one where if you do copy that with Sarkhan, they're probably not going to kill it, but if they do, they're getting punished. The Ward 3 dragon.
Yeah, so but just imagine the timing. So you cast your dragon on turn 4 and you have 1 mana up. They're choosing not to kill Sarkhan before it copies, and they're choosing not to counter your 4 mana dragon. And then, okay, now it copies it, so it gets to attack for 4 on turn 4. That's okay, it's not that impressive. Then you're just like hoping they target it after it's copied it, so you get to do 6 damage to them. Or, I mean, that's just not how it's ever going to happen. So
you're killing me here. Like, I want to like Sarkhan, I just don't see it. I don't know.
Well, I'm not playing the dragons that don't make Sarkhan good.
Okay, so you just want more of the Goldspans and Glorybringers. That's it.
Like, Goldspan is better than Glorybringer, I think, quite clearly. Like, just being able to do 8 damage and then leave up all that mana is just so awesome. And then the other problem is, like, you need to have a certain amount of dragons because Sarkhan doesn't change permanently, right? The next turn it's just a random 2/4 dude on the ground. He's not doing much. So that's where cards like I think Consider and Dig Through Time are a little bit more useful because you actually do want to find like dragons, and you get like way more paid off by finding a dragon in the middle of the game if Sarkhan's in play.
Okay, well, if you test this, I mean, I would like to keep track of every time you draw Sarkhan if he's actually better than Kiora or the other options you tried.
Yeah, exactly. Then that's the main question, right? Sarkhan, the turn it comes into play, cannot allow you to fire Impulse, does not allow you to cast Consider. Those are the 2 big ones. I do think that the Glorybringer thing is also kind of nice against specifically Atraxa. You actually get to just kill Atraxa.
Oh, that's nice.
And do 8. Yeah.
Exactly enough.
So you can even like, that means you can like get to tap out against these like transmog lists, which like it's not great for them to get an Atraxa, but you just do 8 and kill their creature and they have like a whole board they're left to deal with.
All right, so that is Izzet Dragons with Sarkhan Soul Aflame. The next card I see you have here is one that both Mort and I ranked fairly highly. It's Nixilis, the Captive Kingpin, 2 black-red, 4/3, Flying Trample, Legendary Demon. Whenever one or more opponents each lose exactly 1 life, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on Nixilis, and exile your top card of your library, which you have until the end of until your next end step to play.
Yeah, so I found this cool 5/0 list that a gentleman named Steven Dykman posted. He played a really cool list that was taking advantage of Voldaren Thrillseeker and Dreadbore Butcher and Scornblade Berserker. So I included his tweet here where he posts his 5/0. The one thing he notes is he should have played Thoughtseizes. He said he boarded in all 5 of his matchups. So we can just move those to the main deck, which I've done. And he's playing a bunch of like speculative cards I don't love. Like there's 1K Command. He said he did not need all of his 1-drops, like the Scornblade Berserker he thought was a little excessive. So I just moved a couple of Nixilis to the list because he was already playing Fanatical Firebrand, which is kind of like cool tech. Dreadhorde Butcher, if you play it after the Nixilis, right? They either take 1 and trigger Nixilis, or they block it and kill it, and it triggers the Nixilis. Voldaren Thrillseeker is cool. Like putting +1/+1 counters on Nixilis is awesome. Like it gives you that sort of, I don't know if you want to call it a combo kill, but you put it on, it attacks, it's Flying Trample, right? So it has at least 6 power. Then you can sack it. So it's sort of like, you kind of do your like finishing move with the artifact that can ping that's banned in Pioneer. Walking Ballista. You get to do your like Walking Ballista thing where you attack for 6, whatever, then you remove all 6 counters. That's basically what you get to do when you Voldaren Thrillseeker the Nixilis, right? You're putting on a Flying Trample creature, so it does most of its power, or all of its power. Then you sack it, and you do all of its power again. And then, if that doesn't kill them, Voldaren Thrillseeker is a 1/1. If it gives its +1/+1 counters to something else, you can sack it to do a damage. So let's just imagine you've got 6 mana in play or something. You play Voldaren Thrillseeker, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on Nixilis. You sack Voldaren Thrillseeker, you shoot them for 1. You put another +1/+1 counter on Nixilis, you look at your top card, you get to play until end of turn. Then you get to attack with an Nixilis that's at least 7 power, assuming no other triggers have happened. Flying Trample. And then you get to sack that to do 7 damage. So, like, you just have the ability to just, like, kind of curb people out of nowhere. You don't quite have to do, like, the Yargle thing. You're just playing a much more, like, normal card. It's much more stable, right? 4 mana, 4/3. So, yeah, it just seemed like a cool ad. First of all, I love Steven Dykman's dick. Excuse me. I love Steven.
Me too. Same.
Yeah, exactly.
Girl, same.
Yeah. Spectacular. I love this deck. It's just such a cool idea. And I think, again, like, backup is just really undervalued. And this is just an amazing use for it. And so maybe this isn't the exact right configuration. And I think we all know that a Nixilis will be awesome with the Cat Oven shell, like with Devil, you know, as like a 2 or 3 of at the top of the curve. But I just love this kind of innovation and trying to, you know, continue to explore this area.
So I had not seen this 5/0 list, but it's very, very cool. Voldaren Thrillseeker is one of those cards that, you know, it just looks amazing. Like, I haven't actually thought through all the homes for it, but every scenario I'm envisioning drawing it, I'm just having a great turn. I'm just picturing a big smile on my face as I tap my mana and, like, arrange my things on the battlefield and put the counter somewhere. And seeing that as, like, one of the featured cards here, yeah, can't wait to try this. Now, the cards that you trimmed to fit this package in, it looks like you trimmed some of the 1-drop backup creature.
Yes, I cut a couple Scornblade Berserkers. I cut a few of the random 3-drops that were like value cards, because in theory, Nixilis is like our value card, because it does draw while it's also killing them, right? So I cut a K-Command. I cut a couple of Call of the Death Dweller. Just don't love that card, so... And I think I cut a land down to 24. I don't know if you 25 land when your curve tops out at 2 4-drops, especially with 4 Fable.
And I guess to put the Thought Seizes in, you also had to just decrease the creature synergies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going. First of all, multiple commenters said Thoughtseize is the best card in the deck. That is correct. Thoughtseize is the best card in the format. It's weird to not play a deck without all 4. And it's like, all right, well, you know, you don't want to just say that in the abstract. What does the deck designer who 5-0'd with it? He said, I boarded in all 4 Thoughtseizes in all 5 matchups. So it's like, well, seems like if that was in our main deck, maybe. Although, you know, it was a 5-0 with only 1 game loss, so it obviously wasn't that big of a deal. Maybe you want 2 main. I'd at least start with the 4 Thoughtseizes, especially again if he's saying he brought in all 4 in all 5 matchups, then obviously there's a little bit of a home for him. Especially like K-Command is just not a very playable card in Pioneer. And I just think, like, basically, I don't know how good Sword and Blade Berserker is, but he was saying he really wanted it with like synergies with Call of the Death Dweller, and I think just cutting some of those soft synergies and just playing the Demon as like our finisher du jour, like with sort of the quote unquote combo kill I'm outlining there, is like, it's like having the Yargle combo in your deck without having to like do all the nonsense of playing a Yargle and then... Because, I mean, if you're doing 7 trample damage and then sacking it, like, you're basically doing whatever. You're doing 14. That's just so good. And it does not take that much mana. Like, you can do it on curve. Turn 4, the Demon. Turn 5, you have 5 lands. Thrillseeker, sack, hit. It's 14. It's crazy.
So, talk to me about Nixilis specifically. You've got it in here as like a 2 of a curve topper that's powerful but not an essential part of the plan. Is that kind of where you see Nixilis' ceiling, or is there potentially, like, is this card just insane? It's like a Korvold class threat that you should just play all 4?
We'll have to find out. This does not draw, so it's not Korvold, but it doesn't require 3rd color, so maybe it's good that it doesn't have to do that. I think it's just a really well-designed card. I like that it's actually really soft to red removal. So there's like some synergy there. Like, you want to almost wait as long as possible to play it so you can like pump it in response. I don't think you need to worry about the card advantage as much. I think this is a card that just gets them dead. Like, a Flample card that's going to grow by 1 or 2 power. That it just does it by itself. I don't think you need to be like, oh, we don't want to trigger this now on our turn because we won't get the card. It's, you know, sometimes games require that, but most of the time I think you're just going to attack for 5 or 6 on the following turn if it doesn't die.
And then in terms of triggering that whenever an opponent loses 1 life, you haven't gone too far out of your way. I guess the Fanatical Firebrands are the one card that stands out here as something you typically wouldn't play, but the rest of these are sort of plausible even without Nixilis. So you're not playing things like Spikefield Hazard or just like trying to get cheeky with, extra sources of 1 damage.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even consider that this deck was a thing you could do. So I wanted to at least stay pretty true to the creator's vision. And he already started with 4 Fanatical Firebrand. That's what kind of triggered me. Like, wow, it's just a random card he thought was good enough. That was good enough to 5-0. And specifically, he said it's a card that holds counters, clears blockers, and allows him to play a ton of ways to kill turn 1 elf. Because when mono green is really good, that is when these sack decks struggle. So this is a deck that's like built to be way better against mono green while still being true to its strategy. And then we just get this other random card we get to put on top that interacts with these 4 Firebrands we're going to play anyway. And same with the Dreadhorde Butcher. Like, the Butcher's obviously great with Voldaren Thrillseeker. But it's even better if you just have an Ob Nixilis in play. And okay, normally it sucks to draw a Dreadhorde Butcher on turn 5, but now you just get to like throw it at them and it triggers Ob Nixilis no matter what they do. They can't stop it.
So it seems like the common play pattern is we just want to slam the Thrillseeker even on turn 3, put the counters anywhere we can. Like, we don't need to have mana open. We don't need to use the backup. We just need to use it as like a tempo play that will eventually be useful.
Yeah, that's my sense. I have not actually watched the league. I believe Steven Dykman was streaming. Mm-hmm. So yeah, let's shout him out here. Twitch.tv/the Swish Gaming is Steven Dykman's Twitch feed, and hopefully you can find some league play of this deck.
All right. So that is a Rakdos. We won't call it Sec. Should we call it Sec? It's not really Sec. It's Rakdos.
Rakdos backup?
Rakdos backup. Okay, with Ob Nixilis.
Yeah.
Cool home. But the next deck you have here is something that wasn't even on my radar at all.
Yeah, so this card being Ob Nixilis, Captive King, goes infinite with all will be 1. So when a single damage is done somewhere, which is very easy to do with all be 1 in play, then Ob Nixilis gets a +1/+1 counter, which triggers all be 1, which you can use to target your opponent. They take exactly 1 damage, which means Ob Nixilis gets another +1/+1 counter, which means all be 1 is triggered. And because you're exiling off the top instead of drawing like Korvold, you actually can't get decked if you're somehow low in cards. So you just get to do all 20 or 30 or 50 or whatever damage to your opponent, assuming they can't kill Ob Nixilis. And so I've been tooling around with an all be 1 deck before. And the problem was that Harness Lightning, which is a super cool find, I don't know who recommended it to you. You brought it up to me in the chat. It's from our Discord as a card that's awesome with all we want. It was a super overperformer. I think I put 2 in my deck. Harness Lightning was bugged on Magic Online, so my league was just aborted. Every time I cast it, it reset the game, and my opponents raged, and so I didn't really get to see how good the deck was. So, like, transposing that to the full 4 Harness Lightnings, again, I'm assuming the card is not bugged anymore, but I don't know. And then the full 4 Ether Hubs, because we want to splash. So the only black card we're playing is Ob Nixilis, so it's a super easy splash. You just play a few dual lands, Ether Hub, plus Harness Lightning, plus the Experimental Augury. Proliferate effect means we just have this, like, free, like, tri-land, basically. And, yeah, the plan's very simple. We just try to resolve all be 1 on turn 4. First, so that you can resolve Ob Nixilis the next turn, and then we've got a wide variety of ways to add a counter, which is 4 Tablet of Completion, Filigree Silex. You can play an Ether Hub out of hand. We have 4 Spikefield Hazards, 4 Harness Lightnings, a Chandra, or multiple Chandras, 1 3-mana Chandra, 2 4-mana Chandras, and 2 6-mana Chandras. And then, yeah, you just kill them.
So looking at the list now, I mean, it looks super sweet. Adding in this secondary Ob Nixilis combo, amazing. You actually have very little blue. Like, I'm wondering if the blue should just be cut.
Yeah, no, I thought about it. The splash is free. I thought about just playing black. The problem is I don't know what the best way to actually, like, find the Ob Nixilis would be then. Like, Experimental Augury as a card that is awesome with all be 1 in play, like in the quote-unquote fair games when our opponent is good. Like, we're playing red-black. They're very good at killing Ob Nixilis, right? I'm expecting to never win with the combo there. Is there a black card that is, like, tutor-ish enough that also, like, works with our plan? Like, I couldn't think of one.
All right, well, let me float this for you. So one thing that you can do with All Will Be One is you can play battles, and every time you play the battle, you get the slightly underrate spell effect plus a bunch of counters, right? Similar to using planeswalkers just like spells, but the battles are closer to actual spells. So if there were spells that were attached to battles that were like almost good enough, I wonder if you could put them in this deck and just have them become like amazing top decks later in the game with All Will Be One. And the card that I'm thinking of here is the green one that just looks at your top 5 and picks any permanent and puts it into your hand. So then you would be replacing blue with like Attune with Ether for energy, and then like I think it's called Invasion of Ixalan.
Yep.
One in the green.
I think it looks like your top 4, but
no, it's top 5.
Is it top 5? Okay, that's good.
4 defense, so you'll only get 4 counters. You'll get 4 damage if you draw it later in the game. And it finds your All Be One, it finds your Nixilis, finds your Tablet of Completion. Gotta find the Tablet of Completion, of course.
Yeah, it's certainly worth doing. So we're still adding a third color, is your point.
But Attune with Ether makes it also smooth, buttery smooth with Attune with Ether.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I like the idea of blue just because it gives you super generic interaction on turn 2. Like Censor and Negate just stops their 2 or 3 drop, no matter what it is. And so green basically is like, we have to almost be like a turbo combo deck. We can't interact with anything that they're doing, and we're doing everything at sorcery speed instead of instant speed. But it still might just be better. So I think those are like 2 angles to pursue, and we just have to find out which one's better.
And are you moved at all by the battles plus All Will Be One?
Once All Will Be One is in play, if you're not so far behind, you will win the game. Like, I was doing all kinds of nonsense stuff, like resolve Narset, like kill a creature, minus it, find a Harness Lightning, kill 2 creatures. Like, you X for 1 them incredibly fast. The problem is getting there, right? We're resolving a 5-mana enchantment. That turn doesn't do anything. So that's why I'm just really prioritizing either you could play green also for your ramp. Like, maybe you don't play Tablet of Completion, you play Sylvan Caryatid as a blocker, right? Like, I think I'd make that switch right away. And maybe that's just the way to go. And then you could play like the red-green battle as well, that like rummages a card and also puts a treasure into play as a possibility as well.
Invasion of Urgamon.
Yeah. I was really prizing being able to play like my planeswalkers onto a clean board, and that's a lot easier to do if you like have mana up, right? And you can like Harness Lightning or Censor or whatever. But if you add green, maybe that's just like a lot more stable base. And if you just play like enough generic removal, like maybe you don't even play Harness Lightning, maybe you don't even play Other Hub, and you just like let your planeswalkers win for you.
So I was going to ask if you can just cut the planeswalkers, but you feel like they're an important part of just like going over the top with the enchantment.
Well, the way this deck is built, before I needed the planeswalkers, that was my win condition. I didn't have this infinite combo. I've cut way down on planeswalkers. I only have 5 of them in the deck. And I think the 3-mana Chandra is actually pretty mediocre. I just wanted a 5th way to play All Will Be One on turn 4.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's another way to do that, again, like I'm saying, I think green gives you the ramp. So maybe that's like, those are the 2 builds I try. Of course, I just love like Izzet. That's like my generic playstyle. I love just like keep all my mana up. Am I going to tap Tablet of Completion? Am I going to cast Experimental Augury? Like Experimental Augury with a few random permanents in play and All Be One is just like an insane card. Like 3 mana, do 4 damage, split however I want, like an insane Electrolyze.
Oh yeah, I guess it also lets you give yourself an extra energy, so that triggers again.
Yeah, gives myself an extra energy, add any counter to Tablet of Completion, add a counter to Filigree Silex if I want, add a counter to whatever Planeswalker might be in play. But yeah, maybe it's all too cute. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm liking a lot of the cards we're talking about in the green version. I think I would maybe not play the Other Hub then. Let Sylvan Caryatid fix my mana. And then just like play out Nixilis, and then just any other random card that... Oh, it has to do exactly 1 though. So maybe we do need Other Hub. I don't know. We'd have to think about it.
The hub is too free. Gotta play the hub. Gotta play the hub.
Yeah. You could also even play like the green card that proliferates or fights.
Okay.
Instead of the thing that makes 2 energy and so you could split them, because the proliferate actually is the card that's going to kill with a Nixilis in play.
Or the one that gets a land, Thirsting Roots, proliferates or gets a land.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's the card I'm talking about, yeah. So, like, the fight half is not good because we won't probably have very many creatures, but...
Well, this one doesn't fight. This one is...
Oh, it doesn't fight, yeah. It finds a basic or proliferates, yeah. So, yeah, you have to, you know, so I think there's definitely something there. I do think the key, though, is you want to play all V1 first. You want to play all V1 on turn 4 and then win turn 5. Because that blanks, like, a bunch of different decks do not have instant speed interaction. I list a bunch of common ones here. Mono white, mono green, Grease Fang, decks that just, like, tap out on turn 4 to put Atraxa in play. Red green boats. They don't have a way to kill all V1 on 4 in their main deck, and they don't have an instant way to kill a Nixilis. So if you just do this, you have won the game. If you just find it, you won't do it every time, but, like, decks are not equipped. Those decks are not equipped to interact with this combo at all. It's like a Splinter Twin when people are playing, you know, stomps or whatever that is. They can't interact with what we're trying to do. So yeah, I think the point is I found this deck to be, like, very functional as a more fair deck, where I was just, like, resolving all B1 and then resolving, like, a 4 or 6 mana Chandra. Having the infinite combo as a borderline free splash, I think, makes this deck way better and gives you outs to just win games or you're way behind. Because, like, I just listed a bunch of decks that are tier 3, tier 2, or tier 1, where you just win if they haven't killed you already.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I was, like, eager to hear your report on the first draft, and was very sad when it got cut short by the Harness Lightning bug.
And I don't know if it's not fixed, so maybe we have to play the green version and just not do the Harness Lightning thing, just so we can, like, finish a league with it. I don't even know how to check. I've, like, Googled, like, Reddit, is Harness Lightning still bugged? And all I ever see are people saying, like, I think the Harness Lightning is bugged, but no one ever plays it, so I don't know.
Yeah.
So if anyone knows, they could post in the Discord or send a message to Dan at Faithless Brewing on Twitter. We would love to hear.
Very true. All right, next card up is another one that Mord and I did not talk about. I'm looking at Narset Enlightened Exile, 4 copies of Narset Enlightened Exile. David, tell me about this card and what do you like about it?
Okay, so it's 1, a blue, a red, and a white for a 3/4 human monk. And it says creatures you control have prowess. That's pretty good. And then whenever it attacks, exile target non-creature, non-land card with mana value less than its power from a graveyard and copy it. You may cast a copy without paying its mana cost. So a few things that people don't realize. 1, unlike Arcanist, this does not exile the card permanently. So you can cast the same 3 or 4 mana card over and over again, assuming it goes to the graveyard, right? So you can cast Consider over and over again. It never leaves. 2, it's from a graveyard. So if you countered or killed your opponent's Fable, Narset gets that. If your opponent Thoughtseize you earlier in the game and you get to attack with Narset, you can target their Thoughtseize. So that already is just super powerful. I heard Todd Anderson, he is Tandy MTG on Twitch and Twitter. He was saying that he thinks Narset is kind of like Sheoldred, where if you untap with it, you're very likely to win because it's so powerful. I want to go one better. So all the lists I'm proposing have the same shell, which is 4 Bitter Reunion, 4 Fable of the Mirrorbreaker, 4 Narset. Bitter Reunion and Fable of the Mirrorbreaker work very well together. Like granting haste the turn you get your Kiki Jiki token is awesome. Granting haste to Narset when it comes into play, that is our, Todd Anderson untap. Let's just do it right away. Let's not wait for removal. And Bitter Reunion naturally puts itself in the graveyard. And again, Narset can get any creature non-land, so it can just hit Bitter Reunion, which is better than a draw card, right? It comes into play, you discard a random card of your choice, you get 2 new cards, and then you can grant haste in the future. So I've got 2 shells with these 12 built in. So one is a blue-red like Pyromancer shell, where my Pyromancer is 3rd Path Iconoclast because that triggers on Bitter Reunion and Fable. We have Fiery Tempers because that works with Fable and Bitter Reunion. We have the 8 1-mana cantrips. We have 4 Fiery Impulse. We have 4 Meeting of the Minds. And then a couple of Treasure Cruise. Again, Narset is unique. Unlike Arcanist, it's not putting too much demand on our graveyard. So Treasure Cruise can, if you got an 8-power Narset, I guess you could cast it, but you can recast Consider, like during your turn, put more cards in your graveyard. When Narset attacks, it's not removing them. It's easy enough to get it up to 4 power, so you can actually cast Meeting of the Minds from your graveyard. It can always get a Fable. Let's say they counter your Fable, you just get it back. So that's one shell. The other shell is like red-white with the blue splash for Narset, and that's playing Bitter Reunion, Fable, Narset. For Reckless Stormseeker, another card that pumps power and grants haste to Narset. That's interesting. Jeskai Ascendancy, a super cool card that I'm interested in playing with Stoke the Flames and Narset. Raise the Alarm is a card you can cast over and over again with Narset, and then it gives you tokens that get pumped. Rawl's Reinforcements, another 2-mana sorcery that makes tokens. And then like a 1 of Gideon. I don't think people realize that you just play Gideon, minus it makes Narset a 4 power that turn. Or let's say it was already in play. Like we play Gideon on 4. We play Narset with a Bitter Reunion in play. Gideon made a 2/2 the previous turn that chumped, let's say. Gideon sacks itself. Narset goes to 4 power. We grant it haste with Bitter Reunion. We attack with Narset. We get a Gideon back. We can minus it again if we want. Or make another 2/2. Yeah, I just think this card is like super awesome. The only thing holding it back is the Jeskai mana cost. Like, can you make those colors on curve? How controlling, how aggressive do you want to be? Stormseeker is just super cool with Narset. It just immediately puts it to 4 power so it can get back a Stoke the Flames or whatever.
So you're finding a lot of really cool stuff to do with Narsets. I'm almost on board, but I think I'm just stuck on Narset itself. Like, I'm not quite sure why when you see this card, you see like very high power potential. Whereas when I look at it, I see like 4-drop, doesn't have an ETB, only has 3 toughness. You have to like basically have to pair it with haste, otherwise you can't realistically expect it to do anything.
Okay, well, first of all, it has 4 toughness, just so we're clear. It's 3/4.
Correction, it has 4 toughness. All right, that's a little bit better.
It always attacks with 4 power because it's always going to cast a spell from the graveyard.
Okay.
Minimum. Then that's not talking about buffing any other creatures. That's with nothing else in play.
But that's like next turn. That's after you've cast your 4-drop and had it survive. Whereas Dreadhorde Arcanist, the widely panned 2-drop, I mean, if I just want to recast spells, I mean, Arcanist recasts a good chunk of the spells we're talking about here. It's really only missing on a few of them.
It misses on all of them. It doesn't cast my opponent's Fable. It doesn't cast my own Fable. It can only cast instant sorcery, so it can't hit Bitter Reunion.
But Fable won't even be dead by the time Narset's coming online.
Well, I'm going to get Thoughtseize. I mean, my opponent gets to cast spells.
All right.
Well, I like Todd Anderson's comparison to Sheoldred. Sheoldred's another 4-drop that we dismissed because it does not have it come into playability. We all agreed that was our assessment, right?
Yes.
This is a 4-drop that doesn't have it come into playability. Unlike Sheoldred, it gets way better with haste, though. It comes into play and draws a card and makes like 3 to 4 mana. Every time it attacks, it makes 3-ish mana and draws a card. It's like a super Manamorphose every time it attacks.
All right, I see part of the Sheoldred comparison, but I feel like that's not why we were wrong about Sheoldred. Like, Sheoldred just sits there. It doesn't require you to do anything. Narset, like, you got to make up for the time you lost casting Narset. You have to attack. You have to have stuff on your deck that makes it worthwhile to do this. It's not even guaranteed it's going to survive the attack, much less the removal spells.
Yeah, I guess to me, my default plan is removal spell on 1, removal spell on 2, Reckless Stormseeker, play Narset, flashback, removal spell.
Okay.
Like, if I can just do that, and again, removal spells aren't good against every deck, and yada yada, that curve itself is actually, like, borderline unbeatable against other fair decks if they don't specifically kill Narset that turn.
So then you're envisioning Narset casting 1 spell the turn you play it, and, I mean, how many spells does it need to cast to win the game? 2, 3 attacks should do the job?
Well, again, Reckless Stormseeker pumps Narset. Narset is 4 power that turn. It attacks and pumps Reckless Stormseeker and itself, let's just say in this scenario. So it attacks as a 5 power at least, and Reckless Stormseeker is attacking as a 3/4 if Reckless Stormseeker gets to attack. If we get to cast another spell before our turn and then attack again, we're attacking for like another 11 or something. I mean, we're not having to cast that many spells to win the game. Like, granting prowess to a couple of Raise the Alarm tokens, or like whatever, I Fire Impulse your elf, I pass to you, you play a ramp spell. I cast Raise the Alarm. I pass back on your end of turn 2. On turn 3, I play Reckless Stormseeker, attack for 2. You play a Planeswalker. I play Narset, give it haste and attack. And I attack for like 12 or something. on turn 4, and then the next turn I attack for like 22 if I can cast like another spell. Because you can flashback Raise the Alarm. It's like the turn after that, I have 4 Raise the Alarm tokens and a Reckless Stormseeker and a Narset. So you play your 5/6 and whatever. You draw a card with Kiora. I'm attacking with 4 1/1s, a Reckless Stormseeker, and a Narset, and I get to cast at least 2 spells. So like all my 1/1s are 3/3s, and my Stormseeker is 4 power, and my Narset is 6 power or something. So yeah, that's 22 damage.
All right, so some of this go wide potential of Narset is being unlocked more in this Jeskai Ascendancy tokens version. I think I'm starting to see how that would happen. I think in the Izzet version, just splashing Narset, where it's more like Narset has to solo the opponent with maybe a little help from third path, I'm not as convinced. Like there, it just seems like a fancy Vaedrock, but I'm prepared to be wrong.
Yeah, so I mean, does it need to go in a more aggro shell? Does it need to go in a more control shell? I just think it does so much when it attacks. It really rewards you. Like I've got a bunch of other cards listed here. Like you could play it with the like Baird Kumano faces Kazakhon, right? Like Kumano on turn 1, Baird on turn 2, trigger, get the 1/1. By the time you are playing your Narset, you actually have like 4 or 5 bodies in play possibly. And Kazakhon is another card you can buy back, again, because it's a non-creature, non-land. You can play with Restoration of Iganjo to like, maybe you could build in like a reanimation plan along with your Narset if you want to play like Restoration plus Fable plus Bitter Reunion.
Yeah, that's actually kind of what made me think of Vaedrock is the ability to like recast not just instants and sorceries, but also other permanent types. Turns out to be pretty cool. There's just like very few cards that actually do it. So if you're talking about like rebuying a permanent Saga or even a Planeswalker, I think Teferi was legal when we did our Vaedrock week. It just like suddenly gets like a lot more powerful than it may look at first glance. So yeah, Restoration of Iganjo seems really interesting. Of course, we start with the Fables, and yeah, I guess Bitter Reunion makes sense too.
I mean, I think the haste there is so important. The one other card, we haven't even talked about it, See the Truth.
Oh god.
Does that do anything right? Fable, discard See the Truth, eventually get to cast it for over and over again. It doesn't exile from your graveyard. Anything? Anybody? All right, I'm just putting card after card. This card's insane.
You know what card I really wanted to talk about was the 2-mana PNLR that triggers off cards being cast from exile. What do you think of that? Like, not necessarily for this deck, but...
So I've become weirdly obsessed with we get to play 8 copies of the 1 in a red, exile 2 cards from the top of your library.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So it's like, I've been wanting to do that because I talked about it with the 4/4 that pings every time you do a damage. Every time you cast an instant or sorcery. So I started like drawing up shells for that. You have to help me out with the card name, Dan, that flips. It makes a red every time you cast an instant or sorcery, and it does a damage to your opponent.
Oh, Bergie, God of Storytelling?
No, the red one that you said was unplayable. It's like a 4-mana.
Oh, Urborg.
Yeah, the new Urborg.
The great work.
So it's like, man, like 8 of these is awesome. We should be doing something with this. Like prowess isn't really good enough. I really like the red card that like adds a +1/+1 counter every time you cast a red spell, but it's so, fragile it dies to stiff wind. But yeah, this chick is actually kind of sweet. You cast one of those on 2, the card stay till the next turn. You could play her and a land and a spell, so you get 2 Thopters. So she's kind of like a 2-mana P and Kira, but they also have haste. It actually seems really good, right?
Yeah, I mean, triggering off not just spells, but also lands played from exile, that's super generous. She's the first of her kind, really, that like rewards you for that specifically. But
I mean, I don't want to play or See the Truth. I want to play 8 of those other guys, and just
yeah, exactly.
You and I just love moving cards around, so it's like we have 8 cards that draw 2 cards.
Yeah, but you get Thopters to help you move the cards around.
Yeah, like exactly.
Little Amazon drones.
Yeah, and then if maybe you're playing like Stoke the Flames, it's like a quote unquote free spell with your Thopters. Yeah, there might be something there.
Could play Narset in that deck. Power up all the Thopters.
Yeah, exactly. Can you make her a Thopter somehow? So she gets haste?
Oh god. That's pretty funny. Yeah, giving Narset haste. Okay, that's the key. And speaking of giving creatures haste, we have one last deck list here that actually looks super sweet. And it's built around a 3-drop called Urborg Scavengers. Urborg Scavengers, this did make my top 8 list, and I'm curious to hear your take on it, David.
Yeah, I don't think Urborg Scavengers is actually good in a fair deck. So you guys were talking about, is this maybe like a Soulflayer-like card, or is it more like a Graveyard Trespasser? Now, I'm one to love a Graveyard Trespasser, as you know, but I don't think this does the same thing. The key thing about Graveyard Trespasser was always a 2-for-1 in the face of removal. Urborg Scavenger is actually very vulnerable, especially to red removal. It dies to stomp the turn it comes into play with its trigger on the stack. So I don't think you want to play it as a quote-unquote fair card or a way to attack your opponent's graveyard. I think you want to think about it as Soulflayer 5 through 8, right? We talk about the rule of 8 a lot. This is the rule of 8. You guys mentioned haste. Yeah, that's the only way I want to play this card. So I'm playing with Soulflayer. We're not doing the Neoform thing, so we're not vulnerable to a lot of the cards that people are bringing in against Neoform. We're all in on a Soulflayer or Urborg Scavengers winning the game for us. And because of that, we want to play as many haste effects as we can. We're playing the full 8 Adult Gold Dragon, a classic, and Questing Beast. And then we're playing 16 Enablers, so 4 Otherworldly Gaze, a Dan Shriver favorite.
Love it.
4 Thoughtseize. Like I said, this is the best card in the format. Can preserve our Urborg Scavengers, take their Thoughtseizes, take their counter magic, take their stomps away. 4 Tainted Indulgence. I think this is the best 2-mana spell to discard because it is instant speed, and instant speed matters with Otherworldly Gaze and Grisly Salvage, and then Grisly Salvage is the other one. So we're playing the full 12 of the fast lands now that we've got Darkslick Shore. So this is the list I played like a Esper version that was more controlling of this back in the day with just Soulflayer. If you didn't find Soulflayer, it was really hard to win. Now we're going to find one of these dudes every time. So the plan is we do the Soulflayer thing. That's awesome. Or Urborg Scavengers is like pretty close because it can be a 4/4 the first turn, right? You play it, you exile your Adult Gold Dragon. So you have a 3/3 flying haste, lifelink. You attack, you exile anything else. Hopefully it's a Striped River Winder or is a Topple, but maybe not. And then all of a sudden you're just hitting for 4 in the air or double striking if you're lucky. And it's either indestructible or hexproof or whatever. And that's already just pretty good. If you can do both, then you've not won, but you're way ahead. And if it's just some or the other, then, you know, it's not that bad. I mean, even just attacking with a 4/4 haste lifelink on turn 3, and yeah, maybe the white deck gets to exile it with Nosification. That's still not bad. It's a fine trade.
So I don't think I'd fully processed that the Urborg Scavengers picks up all of the abilities immediately. Like I was kind of thinking in my head that it just got 1 ability per attack, like because it only gets 1 counter per attack. But that's not true. Like you get 1 counter per attack, but you get all the abilities immediately.
And counter when it comes into play.
Correct.
So the turn it comes into play, so that's why we have the full haste. So you've seen some of these shells with like an Adult Gold Dragon or 2, or maybe a Questing Beast, like the Neoform list that also play Soulflayer don't have any haste granting abilities. We're all in. We have 8 of those because that is really important to the Scavenger. And then our other 8 are Striped Riverwinder. It naturally puts itself in the graveyard. Hexproof is super important. And then Zetalpa has all the abilities but haste. Double Strike and Indestructible are super attractive. And so our dream, right, is we Grisly Salvage to find our Scavengers. If you are free to do so, you want to play Scavengers over Soulflayer if they don't have mana up to kill your creature. Let's say they tap out and play Fable, right? Fable, it should be broken. I resolved it. Okay. Resolves. Grisly Salvage on your end step. If we can hit Adult Gold Dragon and Zetalpa, then we'd much rather play an Urborg Scavengers than Soulflayer because Scavengers is going to get bigger every turn, and Soulflayer is locked in at 4/4. Scavengers is already 4/4 at the end of that first turn, and is only going to get bigger. And attacks their graveyard, right? If they have a Kroxa or whatever, or if they're playing Atraxa, right? Like they put their Atraxa in their graveyard, and we take it.
So that would, in theory, just kill them in 2 swings, right? Like you're dealing 4 with double strike immediately, and then the next turn, 6 power double strike. So that's lethal.
Next turn will be 5 because it doesn't get another come into play trigger. It just gets 1. Yeah.
Ah, that's right. Darn. Okay.
So you do 10 and then 8. Yeah. But I mean, with the way most decks work, right? 18 is going to be functionally lethal.
Yeah. Okay, so Scavengers is just like a much better Soulflayer then, because it functions even when you're under Graveyard Hate. Almost a Graveyard Trespasser that's also a Soulflayer.
Yeah, we just have to be very aware that certain decks are going to line up very well against it. If a player is good, right, let's say you're playing against like the red-blue Transmogrify list, Scavengers is very mediocre. They can counter it, they can kill it with the first trigger on the stack, right? They've got a bunch of 1 mana effects that do 2 or 3 damage. They've got multiple 2 mana effects that do 2 or 3 damage. So in your post-board games, you have to really think about what you want to do. Do you want to protect your Scavenger? Do you want to play more hand disruption? Do you maybe want to play like, what's the green instant that gives +1/+1 on hexproof?
Yeah, I guess resolving that initial counter is a bit of a sweat. Like, it does start as a 2/2.
Yeah.
It's not great, but...
Yeah, so like red-black in theory is good against it. We know it just takes people a long time to adjust to play patterns. So there's just going to be a lot of red-black players that like tap out and play their, Blood Tithe Harvester. They tap out and play their Fable on an empty board. That just seems like a reasonable thing to do. And they don't realize like functionally letting Scavengers go off is basically like letting your opponent, hit their Grizzly Salvage into Greasefang. It kind of puts you way behind the 8 ball. It is a little vulnerable also. Both it and Scavengers are vulnerable to Liliana, which red-black decks are playing like 2 of these days. A 1 or 2 of. So that's a very good card. Even against the Talpa, even against Riverwinder, they can still get you.
All right. I think this is my favorite of the ones we discussed so far. That's 6 first drafts for March of the Machine, The Aftermath. I think we should leave it here, but David, how are you feeling about the set now that we've had a chance to look at some lists?
Yeah, I like these cards. I think they printed a lot of cards that are really unique. Each of these cards does something that is a little different than anything we've seen before. Nixilis gives us a combo finish. Sarkhan has a, soft synergy type of thing. The Scavengers thing is, again, it's not a combo that wins the game, but it's a soft synergy that can be very good in certain matchups. So yeah, I love all this. I actually really think this set is super cool.
All right. Well, on that positive notes, we will leave it there. And we will see you next time.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks, David.
Take care.
Deck lists for this episode can be found at our homepage, faithlessbrewing.com. And tune in next time as we open the Brewer's Mailbag and field your questions about the latest news in the multiverse. Support for this podcast is provided by brewers like you. Join the Faithless family and help support the show at patreon.com/faithlessbrewing for Discord access, bonus content, and more. That's all for today. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.